Okay, we're live now. It's somewhat challenging some days, and so forth. And good to see this big group today, and so forth. And it's you know, school's already started, and next thing you know, fall will be here, and next thing you know, it'll be Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and wow, things are flying by and so forth. So we're going to continue our study in Second Kings. Today we are in Second Kings chapter 12, and we got to pass the money plate. We got Calvary Refuge in November, so we got to get ready. One of the things we need to talk about right off the bat is what's the correct name. Is it Joash or is it Jehoash? And if you read in 2 Kings, it's one spelling. If you read in 2 Chronicles, it's a different spelling. Okay? But it's the same person. And it's
Greek or Hebrew?
It's Hebrew. Yeah, the Old Testament's in Hebrew. A few verses are in Aramaic, but it's predominantly Hebrew. But it has to do with who wrote which book, and if you take the EHO out, you have the same word. So it's the same person. In 2 Kings, it's Jehoash, and in 2 Chronicles, it's Joash. And there's, in my leadership book, there's a note about that. I'm assuming there would be a note in the student manual. I don't know. I haven't looked at that. If are there notes as to why there's two different spellings? But it's the same person. So just be aware as you read that it is the same person. Okay. Now, 2 Kings chapter 12 corresponds to 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Okay, so if you want to read the same story, you can go back with a few variants. You can go to read 2 Chronicles chapter 24 and kind of get the same information. And it's quite interesting, the information that is there, and we'll look at some of that. But
it is in our book, by the way.
It is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Also called Joash.
Okay.
But how do you pronounce that other one? Joash?
I would pronounce it based on the Hebrew would Jehoash. I would say, instead of just Joash, I'd say Jehoash. I would pronounce the H just because I understand the Hebrew behind it. So that would be the way I would pronounce it. But in 2 Kings chapter 12, in the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash became the king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. Now, if you go to 2 Chronicles chapter 24, you'll find out that he was 7 years old. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't feel comfortable with a 7-year-old sitting on the throne. So, I just think it's interesting how young people were allowed to sit on the throne at this particular time. His mother's name was Zehoba of Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest, in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Notice that there's a qualification. As long as the high priest instructed him. He's 7 years old. He reigns 40 years, so he, lived to be 47, which to me is kind of young. But he did right as long as the priest instructed him. Now, I can understand in the beginning why a 7-year-old would need instruction. Okay, but after a while you kind of get to understand this. But we'll see later on that once the high priest died, then things didn't go well. And then in verse 3 it says, "But the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense on the high places." So, idol worship is still going on. In other words, Jehoash did what was right as long to a point, but he didn't do all that was right, because he didn't get rid of the high places. The people were still sneaking around in going to the high places, worshiping false gods. Verse 4. "And Jehoash said to the priest, all the money of the dedicated gifts that are brought into the house of the Lord, each man's census money, each man's assessment money, and all the money that a man purposes in his heart to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priests take it themselves, each from its constituents, and let them repair the damages of the temple wherever any dilapidation is found." Now, we need to go back and look at, in the Old Testament, every year, any male over the age of 20 had to put in money to the temple. 1 shekel. Okay? For the rest of his life, from age 20 until they died, every year they would go and put their shekel in. Then the assessment money was, if you had a certain amount of property, you had to put money in for that as well. Once a year. Whatever time of the year you were supposed to put in your assessment money, you put in, it's kind of like your property tax.
Nothing's changed in 2,500 years.
No, you're right. Nothing's changed. But that's how they maintained the temple and how they took care of the Levites. And then, and all the money that a man purposed in his heart to bring into the house of the Lord. In other words, let's say that one Sunday, James feels just empowered to go give a bunch of money, 50 shekels in the offering, then he could go down and, of course it's on Saturday, and put in his 50 shekels because God's blessed him so much. So that's, he just, in other words, it's giving out of your heart. If you felt super blessed one week, then you could give a bunch, and if you didn't feel, that's sort of the way it is today, but nothing's changed, as Gary said, in 2,500 years. And
Except who gets the money.
correct. That's exactly right, except who gets the money. That's exactly right. During this particular time, all the money went to the Lord and was used it was supposed to be used responsible, but not necessarily.
Permanent islands, Mistral depth 6.2 miles, 12 minutes ago.
I apologize. We have a major earthquake situation in Australia. Verse.
For real?
Yeah, it's live. And
That's interesting. It's interesting because of the time we're in, because of the Jewish feast coming on. That's very interesting.
now, in verse 5 it says, notice, and this goes back to what Mary Ellen said, let the priest, notice who's handling the money, the priest, not the government, the priest. Let the priest take themselves, each from his constituencies, and let them repair the damages of the temple wherever any dilapidation is found. So the priests are supposed to be handling the money and getting the work done. Much different than it is today. Now in verse 6, now it was so by the 23rd year of King Jehoash. Now notice, he's been on the throne 23 years. That the priest had not repaired the damages to the temple. 23 years and no progress. It's kind of interesting that, I'm not sure, it doesn't give us any circumstances other than the damages to the temple had not been taken care of. Now we know that Solomon built this very large structure, and over time and some of the wars, it had gotten damaged. In verse 7, so King Jehoash called Jehoiada the priest and other priests and said to them, why have you not repaired the damages of the temple? Now therefore do not take more money from your constituents, but deliver it for repairing of the damages of the temple. And the priests agreed that they would neither receive more money from the people nor repair the damages of the temple. Now notice, the first thing when things go bad is, what does the government do? Raise taxes. Notice, he says, don't take any more money. Don't raise the fees. Keep everything the same. You know, God's going to figure this out. Notice what happens next. Then Jehoiada the priest took a chest, bore a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into the house of the Lord. And I meant to bring my tabernacle fold out, and I forgot. But if you notice the altar, and there's space on the right side, and there is where he put it. Now, he picked a strategic location because he put it beside the altar. And everybody has to go to the altar. So this is the high priest, and he's, following this thing out, and he's figured out, if I take this chest and I put a hole in it, and I set it there, we'll see if anybody puts money in it. They're not raising taxes, so to speak. He's just trying to be thinking ahead. You got to remember now, Joash started when he was 7 years old. It's been 23 years, so he's now 30. You would think by age 30 maybe he learned something, but as we'll find out, he didn't. Back in verse 9 it says, "And the priests who kept the door put there all the money brought into the house of the Lord." So as people came in, gave their money, he put it in this special chest. Verse 10, "So it was whenever they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up and put it in bags, and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord." So notice there's 2 people that's handling the money. They count it so they know how much they got. There's accountability here. And I'm sure we have a member of the finance team in our class. I'm sure there's procedures within our church for handling the money. Is that correct, Gary?
Correct.
And I think there would be pretty stringent.
Oversight. We have oversight on it too.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I thought that would be the case, that we would have requirements for the handling of all the monies, each Sunday. Make sure it gets from the offering plate to the bank, and everything is accounted for.
And traceable.
Oh, okay, very good. I thought that would be the case, but I wanted to verify that. Well, that's the same thing that's going on here. Nothing's changed in 2,500 years. They're accounting for all the money that's taken up from the people. Then they gave the money, which had been apportioned, into the hands of those who did the work, who had oversight of the house of the Lord. Notice who got the money? The workers. Not the admin, not the priests. The workers got the money. And they paid it out to the carpenters and builders who worked on the house of the Lord. So here they got this money, and so they're going to start paying the people to do the work. This is 23 years later, but they're finally, making progress on getting the house of the Lord rebuilt or restored. And in verse 12, and to the masons and stone cutters, and for buying timber and hew stone, to repair the damage of the house of the Lord, for all that was paid out to repair the temple. Okay, if they had to go out and buy lumber, they used the money for that. If they had to go out and buy a stone that had been cut and all that, this money was for restoring the temple. And they're doing a very good job. Verse 13, however, there was not made for the house of the Lord basins of silver, trimmers, sprinkling bowls, trumpets, any article of gold or any article of silver from the money brought into the house of the Lord. Notice the money only went for the work. None of the inside utensils or any of that was restored.
When I read that first time, I missed that word not.
Right, there were not made. So they're getting this money in, they're paying the workers, and they're buying the materials, but the utensils and so forth that are inside the temple, none of that is taken into account. But in verse 14, but they gave that to the workmen, and they repaired the house of the Lord with it. Moreover, they did not require an account from the men into whose hands they delivered the money to be paid to the workmen, for they dealt faithfully. Now, they, at that point, agreed that people would be faithful in the handling of the money. This day and time, I don't think we could do that. Could we, Mr. Tuttle?
Not at all.
In other words, they didn't require an account. In other words, if someone he gave him $50, he expected him to give that $50 to the workman. There was nothing, it was all done based on faithfulness. A lot has changed in that area in the last 2,500 years.
As a little girl, you sealed the deal with a handshake. Shake. That's it.
So,
You still every once in a while, not so much around here, but south of here, go up to a farm where he's got vegetables out there and a box for you to put the money in on the honor system. And I was seeing on TV where they were talking to a farmer about that, and he said he's never lost any money. In fact, he usually gets more than what he sold. People put extra in. And I thought, well, that sure wouldn't work around here.
Nancy and I went home through West Virginia one time, and periodically going through some of those small places, they'd be selling night crawlers because they were plentiful up there. Take your own night crawlers, leave the money, and go on. I said, "What?" He wouldn't put that out around ladder too much. They'd take the box and all.
you're probably right, Dick. Yeah. Things are different depending on, let's say, where you live. I think, things
And how
Things
you
are-
were raised.
do what,
Where you
Gary?
live and how you were raised.
Right.
Right.
And
I remember watching the adults and seeing that handshake and that's how I just assumed that's the way you did it, because that's the way my father did it, and my grandfather. And the things that you hear on the front porch, and then they talk about, honorable things. And then it was, you were reminded at the church of the same things. And it's a shame that more of the life is not spent on the porch and listening to senior adults. It's a shame that they're gone.
Yes.
Man's word was his bond.
You're right, Mary Jo. At one point, if someone said something, that was it. But that's not that's not true. But I think it goes back to, where you were raised, how you were raised, and those kinds of things, and the things that your parents did and taught you as to what was right and what was wrong, and how to treat people, how to respect people, and those kinds of things. I mean, it's much different. But we can see here in the account that they are getting the temple rebuilt, and after 23 years, because of the high priest taking action to help gather the money that they needed, and then they efficiently used the money to pay directly to the workers. But notice in verse 16, the money from the trespass offerings and the money from the sin offering was not brought into the house of the Lord. It belonged to the priest. So they did not forget the priest. They had to survive as well. So the money from the trespass offerings and the money from the sin offering was given directly to the priest. They take care of God's messengers, just like we do today with Brother Craig and our church staff. We use part of our money that's taken up in offerings and tithes and all that, and part of the money goes to the building, part to the staff, and I don't know what all, you can come to the business meeting and get one of those, 14-page sheets that's got all the stuff on it and how the money is used. Well, they have a little bit more simple accounting system here, but they made sure that the money for the trespass offerings and the sins offering was given to the priest to take care of them. So they did take care of the priest. So we see that as long as Jehoiada is the high priest, things are going well. God's work is progressing.
Why do you think the trespass and the sin money was given to the priest? Was it to pay for their sins?
The money was given to the priest to live on.
Right. But the sin money I'm talking about, when you commit a sin.
Well, if you go back to the Old Testament and you had a sin offering and you had a trespass offering. If you committed a sin, then you had to have an offering. If you committed a trespass against someone else, they would have to have an offering.
Kind of like the Catholic Church.
Well, that's what I'm
Very,
saying.
very much
That's
so.
exactly what I was thinking.
Very
All
much.
the guys are rich.
But it goes back to the Old Testament and it lays out, the various offerings that you had to bring to God. And they used two of them, the sin offering and the trespass offering, to supply the needs of the priest. Now, why they picked those two, I'm sure God was in this. The priest seems to be very forthright in what he's doing. He appears to be being led by the Holy Spirit. So I just assume that's how God led him to do that. I don't.
The Levites were the priestly tribe.
Correct. The tribe of Levi was the priest
They
that.
got a tenth, what was it, 12? How much did they get? A percentage? They got a percentage from all the other tribes. There were 12 tribes.
There were 12 tribes, and they
They
got.
didn't pay anything, but.
No, they did not have to pay.
The other 11 tribes supported them.
Right. The other 11 tribes supported the Levi tribe because that was the priestly tribe. And we see here that once again God is taking care of the priestly tribe by giving them the money for the sin offering and the trespass offering. In other words, it doesn't have to go into the big pot. It goes directly to the priest or the Levites. So, in the back when we had the tabernacle, the traveling tent, they got a tenth at that time. Now, at this point, I'm not sure if now that they're established in Israel, of course the tribes have split. We got the 10 northern tribes, the 2 southern tribes. Things are a little bit different now. We don't have the same structure, but I think this is why God is making a special allowance to take care of the Levites, because they are still the priestly tribe and they need to be taken care of. And we don't have this 12 tribes. We got 10 tribes to the north and 2 to the south. So things aren't, that warm, cozy group that when they left Egypt. And then Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it. Then Hazael set his face to go to Jerusalem. So once again we have a new king of Syria, and now it looks like he's headed to Jerusalem. And Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the sacred things that his father Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Azariah, king of Judah, had dedicated, and his own sacred things, and all the gold found in the treasures of the house of the Lord and in the king's house, and sent them to Hazael, king of Syria. Then he went away from Jerusalem. He just did this. No consultation with the priest. I don't read where he prayed about it. He just did it. I don't think God was happy. At the first, they've made such progress, and now this little group of Syrians come up. He's scared, and he tries to buy them off, and does. We need to get godly counsel, and he's got this great high priest that's done great, but now when danger is really here, he doesn't consult with him. Now the high priest lived to be 135. God gave this gentleman a wonderful life. You can read about it in 2 Chronicles 24. Gave this high priest wonderful life, gave him sons and so forth. Great man of God, but here there's no godly counsel. Folks, we've got to have good, godly counsel and instruction. Now, today, we're very fortunate in we can carry our counsel with us in a nice bound leather book, if we so desire, called the Bible. We can have godly counsel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether we're in Georgia or Poland or India or South Africa. Folks, we can take it with us. There's no reason for us not to have godly counsel. And Joash had access to godly counsel, but he didn't use it. All he had to do was, of course they didn't, I was getting ready to say he could pick up the phone and call him, but all he had to do was send the messenger, go get the high priest, and he'd come running. I mean, they would listen to the king, but he didn't do that. The need for godly instruction is so important. And then we see that the high priest is dead. And in verse 19 of chapter 12, it says, "Now the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Judah?" This is a rhetorical question. It's referring to 2 Chronicles chapter 24. And notice this, and his servants, the king's servants, arose and formed a conspiracy and killed Joash in the house of Milo, which goes down to Saliah. For Zehokhar, the son of Shiphrah, and Jehobad, the son of Shomer, his servants, struck him. Folks, they named the people that did it. And notice this. So he died, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And then Amaziah, his son, reigned in his place. Folks, we find out, if you read in 2 Chronicles, that he was taken to the city of David, but was not allowed to be placed in the king's burial spot. He had to go into the common people's burial spot. He was denied, even though he was king for 40 years, he was not allowed to be buried with the other kings. He had to be buried with the common folks in the city of David. He abandoned godly counsel and paid dearly for it. And it's so important that we listen to godly instruction. It's so very important. And it's, how he got where he is, as long as the high priest, he was listening to the high priest, things went well. Once the high priest was out, he lost all the treasures of the city, and he fell into idolatry and was killed by his own servants. Very sad situation. So I think this gives us a good indication of why it is we need godly counsel all the time. Not just, when we're 20s and 30s, but when we're 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, all the days of our life we need godly counsel.
When I'm listening to you, it's almost like they had politics even then. A lot of crooked politics.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it politics, but it's kind of, today we would call it politics. Yeah, because they were, I'm over here for this and I'm over here for this, and I didn't like you, so I'm going to kill you. And that's, and that's what happened. I mean, the servants got upset with him and they turned on him and killed him.
Let me ask another question here. I think we can't quite understand what's going on because the old rain up there is what it used to be. But last week you mentioned the northern tribe a couple of times. Is that the northern tribe, the southern tribe, or have they not split yet?
Oh, they've been split.
They've been split?
Yeah, today we were talking about the southern tribe, the tribe of Judah, which was Judah and Benjamin, and they're in
Right.
Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And that's the reason they're building the temple back. They're building Solomon's temple back at this particular time. And
The northern tribe went practically totally pagan,
well, there for a time they did, yes.
And then Nebuchadnezzar fixed that up, he can down God.
Yeah, that was, and we're headed
Right.
there. But but yeah, that's exactly what happened. Is the southern tribe, had their problems just like the 10 northern tribes had their problem. Everybody had problems. Now, did anybody happen to find any answers to the questions?
Oh, yeah.
We found them, not sure the right ones, but we found them.
Okay. Well, I was encouraged when everyone come in and no one had a bag of rotten vegetables.
Well, they all got number 6 right.
That's good. Okay, number 1,
False.
false. He reigned 40 years. Number 2,
True.
true. Number 3,
True.
true. Number 4,
False. False.
false. Number 5,
False. False.
right, it was on the right side. The side of the altar makes sense. Now, I'm assuming that everyone got number 6 correct.
True.
Due to the fact that it was okay. Let's go on to number 7.
True.
True.
Right. And number 8,
False.
correct. And number 9,
True.
True.
true. And number 10,
False.
false, correct. Okay, very good. So now I have one for next week. I got several complaints that people were sneaking answers from somebody else. So I fixed them so they could fold it so people wouldn't sneak the answers. No, I'm teasing. I did it so it's easier to carry. So you don't have to carry that one paper. And it's all folded up and nice and neat. Now, this one is different, is I'm looking for a missing word. There's 10 of them, but I give you 21 words.
All right.
So you get to pick 10 out of the 21.
Okay. Well, at least we know that one of them is right.
That's right, one of them is right.
That's a big chance.
No, it's not 50-50, it's, you have a 25% chance of getting it right. So, anyway. I know Gary probably wants two. But anyway, there's the word pool is at the bottom on the right side, and you can go through and pick the words that fit and so forth. I tried not to make any trick questions, but I did give you several words, not to trick you, but to, help you get through some of this, and hopefully we can all learn.
Read number 3.
Huh?
Read number 3.
Read number 3.
2.
Number 2,
2.
and went up to Samaria and it for 3 years.
No, but that's not went. When,
Oh, okay. The word when is a mistake.
Oh,
That's a trick word, but that's a trick word.
that's a trick word.
no,
That's a quick question.
that's a school teacher.
That was a typo by my chief secretary, which is me. It should be, and went up to Samaria and, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting that.
Yeah, what is the correction?
On number 2,
Uh-huh.
instead of when, it should be went.
When.
W-E-N-T.
Went up to, okay, went.
Not went up to, went up to. Okay, I apologize.
Nothing gets by this class.
Oh, no. And I appreciate the emails and phone calls every week, because I kind of get out of whack sometimes. Now, very quickly, the prayer list. Any updates to our current prayer list? That I did not hear from Carol this week, so I'll have to give her a call, or Sylvia will give her a call. And I haven't heard anything else from any of the other members.
Anybody heard from Ken and Ruth?
I did, not this past week, but the week before, I did talk to Ken. They were doing much better, but Ruth still has mobility issues. And that's, he's, trying to work with her, and, with her mobility issues, it's, and her daughter is heavily involved in trying to help take care of her and make sure that she gets, the care that she needs. But, they're just, it's a physical thing for them right now with mobility issues. Ken says he, Ken, if you get him, he's always doing fine. he never has a problem. So, is that really true? I don't know. I haven't seen him, but I just talked to him on the phone. And he seems to be very upbeat, very positive when I talked to him, but he said, Ruth's just having a lot of mobility issues.
Suzanne is having a scan next Tuesday.
Okay.
Body scan.
Ken goes to therapy every week, a swimming therapy. He's been trying to get Dick to go to. So he does get out and he does drive.
Yeah. But, let's remember Suzanne, because she's trying to, she's come a long way, but, she's still got a long way to go, but hopefully things will look better on this scan coming up and so forth.
Well, I did call Cecilia, and she did answer the phone for the first time, and she said, I can't talk. And then hung up. That was the first time that she's really even answered the phone. I haven't been able to get a hold of Aaron, her son, so I don't know.
You would continue to remember really my two sister-in-laws, Tricia Daly, who had the stroke, and her sister, Judy Hickman, from Powder Springs. She's been in the hospital she's starting to do a lot of falling, like Juan did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just concerned that she may be going down the same path that you did with all that falling.
Okay, let's be sure.
She lives by herself, she don't want to move in with her children, she wants to be independent.
I got one of those. 95. She wants to stay put.
I understand that,
Yeah, I mean,
but I also understand how the children feel too.
yeah.
They want to move in with them.
Well, Mama has fallen twice, and fortunately she's recovered both times, but at 95 falling is not good. Falling's not good at 69 either. So,
I talk to Carol about every other day, or at least 3 times a week. And this week, she was melancholy. She misses her home. She said Thomas built the home for her. But she said that the people, the first day that she went there, and they invited her to sit down at their table and eat with her and everything. And she said it's very nice, but she's missing her home.
right.
Hard for her.
Yes. I can understand that. It's trying to transition, particularly when you don't really want to, but you got to make a choice. You're at a crossroads in your life, and you have to make choices, and it's tough. It really
You know,
is.
the Apostle Paul said, I've learned that whatever state I'm in, therewith to be content. Because he lived life on both ends of the spectrum, from very good to very, very bad and very dangerous. So,
Right. I mean, they tried to stone him and kill him,
uh,
so we just have to realize that God has a plan, and He's going to help us get through it. And He made a promise, and from that promise we have hope that one day we'll be in glory.
you know, when you mentioned that earthquake, you said Australia. The Jewish holidays are coming up, and this is the year Rosh Hashanah and the year of Jubilee. And always, as you look back in history, there's been major things happen. The year of Jubilee and Rosh Hashanah, world events. Set up a red flag.
Yes, we have to realize that each day we get closer and closer and closer and closer to the rapture. And each day, Matthew chapter 24, another piece of scripture keeps unfolding. And so you're right, it's quite interesting that
It's Shmita here and it's,
So-
Rosh Hashanah.
but it was a 6.6 earthquake in Australia.
What it was, how much?
6.6
What's
Australia. Huh?
Northern, southern,
I don't have time to navigate. I just,
Did it just happen today?
while I was speaking,
Oh,
it's real time within a couple of minutes. So just be aware that things are going on. I guess y'all heard about the bubbling water in Lake Erie this past week, the bubbling water in the Hudson River this past week.
There's lots of signs popping.
And scientists went and found out that it's gas from 1,200 miles down in the Earth's surface that has escaped through a little crevice and came out on the Hudson River, and another piece came out in Lake Erie.
I want to ask a silly question, and I know we don't have time, but you just started digging out here a hole. How far down could you just keep going? I mean, like that, in that instance of the bubbling down in there so many feet down. I mean, can you just keep on digging and digging?
Well, you can dig.
Hit rock or something?
Eventually, you're going to hit some kind of rock. But if you could get one of those special drills and drill through, you could go to the center of the earth. Of course, you wouldn't want to because it's of the heat. I mean, at some point, it's going to get so hot you don't want to go any further because you're talking, 1,200 degrees. I mean, everything melts at 1,200 degrees.
superheated magma.
Right. Which is what comes out at volcanoes, particularly like the National Volcano Park over in Hawaii. I mean, you can go there and see that stuff spewing out. And right, what's going on in Iceland right now, that big volcano up there is spewing lava everywhere. So, here in Hampton, we could go and dig us a hole as long as whatever we got equipment for, that go as deep as we can go till we get so hot we can't stand it.
You get hell then, don't you? It's not so far.
Yeah. But anyway, David, could you give us a quick closing word of prayer and we'll be dismissed?
Heavenly Father, we confess our needs for you today. We need your healing and your grace. We need hope restored. We need to be reminded that you work on behalf of those you love constantly, powerfully, completely. Forgive us for trying to fix our situations all on our own. Forgive us for running all different directions and spinning our wheels to find help. When true help, healing must be found first in you. Forgive us for forgetting how much we need you above everyone and everybody else. We come to you and bring you the places we are hurting. We see where no one else is able to fulfill and you see our understanding. You know the pain we carry, the burdens, the cares. You know where we need to be set free. We ask for healing and grace to cover every broken place, every wound, every heartache. Thank you that you are able to do far more than we could even ever imagine on our own. Thank you for your mighty power that acts on behalf of your children. We reach out to you and know that you are restoring and redeeming every place of difficulty, every battle for your greater glory. Thank you that you will never waste our pain and suffering. We love you. We need you today. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.